Good afternoon. I'm Chris Cooney. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this very special Zoom call. This is in place of our regularly scheduled legislative reception. Like many events that are annual, things are changing amidst the pandemic and COVID. So we thank you for bearing with us. With that said, this meeting provides a great opportunity for dialogue around making the Metro South region and the city of Brockton in particular a more competitive place to conduct business. And today we're just delighted to have the panel that we do. This Zoom call is being recorded and will be posted to the Chamber's YouTube site, as well as the COVID recovery resources page at metrosouthchamber.com. We ask you to post all questions you may have to the question and answer section down below. Or if you prefer, you can put it in the chat and we'll check both areas. I also want to thank our partners who have been promoting these calls, these Zoom calls, and our resources right along since we've pivoted to online. And I just want to mention these organizations: the Avon Industrial Park Association, the Bridgewater Business Association, the Brockton Area NAACP, the Campello and Montello Business Associations, the Cape Verdean Association, the Easton Chamber of Commerce, the East Bridgewater Business Association, Haitians United, the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center Network, the Norwell Chamber, Pembroke Chamber, Randolph Chamber, Stoughton Chamber, and the South Shore Women's Business Network. So thank you all for helping us to promote this. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Chamber's past chair of the board, Sue Joss. Sue is the president and CEO of the Brockton Neighborhood Health Center. Sue and her team of more than 500 healthcare providers and support are in the front lines of this, on the front lines of this pandemic. And we want to thank you, Sue, and your team and your nurses and doctors right here in Brockton. That number over 500, it's amazing. The growth from a small camper, Winnebago, back almost 20 years ago, maybe even a few more years than that, to what you are now leading in the city. So thank you for being with us, and thank you for being our MC today.
Thanks, Chris, and it's great to be here, and it's a pleasure to be part of this meeting. It's actually been 26 years, so lots going on for us at the health center now with COVID. We're here to discuss regional issues of economic importance, as well as the needs and concerns of the business community. I'd like to first recognize and thank our sponsors today, which is Sharon Crescent Credit Union, UMass Boston, and Stonehill College. And to introduce Mayor Bob Sullivan, Mayor Sullivan was elected in January and was 2 months into his term when COVID hit the city of Brockton quickly and hard. And I think his response, his willingness to bring the community together, to listen to experts, to look at the science, has saved many lives in our community. So I thank him from the bottom of my heart for that partnership and his leadership throughout this. Mayor Sullivan was born and raised in Brockton and is a proud graduate of Brockton High School. He earned his BA and MBA at Boston College and his JD at the New England School of Law. Prior to being elected mayor last year, he has served on the Brockton City Council as a councilor at large since 2006. In that role, he was elected by his colleagues to serve as the city council president 5 times. He's married to Maria Louise Sullivan, who also grew up in Brockton, and they have 3 children. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Bob Sullivan.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sue. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. I want to especially just thank Sue Joss and everybody at Neighborhood Health Center. I want to thank Sheila Sullivan-Jard and everybody at Mass Hire, and Chris and his wonderful team at the Chamber. We're all in this together, and COVID, as Sue said, has truly, truly impacted Brockton physically, emotionally, financially, mentally, 294 deaths. So I want to just thank everybody for working in collaboration as we navigate the uncertainty of this pandemic. But I want to take a moment and thank the Baker-Polito Administration for working so diligently with the city of Brockton. And I want to thank Secretary Acosta for joining today. And I look forward to listening to her remarks. But it truly is a pleasure to be here today. It's an honor and a privilege to be the mayor of the city of Brockton, the city that I was born and raised in. And I've said this many, many times, the city's true great assets are the people that reside within the city of champions. They are the champions themselves. And, you know, we have just an extraordinary supply of workers, conveniently located for jobs within Metro South and throughout Eastern Massachusetts. And our residents, as you know, are very diverse, have many diverse backgrounds and skill sets. So with an array of skills and a true talent is really valuable. The city of Brockton has really wonderful, skilled professionals that are attracted to the business sectors. And we know that businesses are coming to the city of Brockton for its geographic location, for its wonderful business-friendly thoughts to attract businesses, maintain businesses that are here, and also bring in new ones. And the tools in the toolbox we utilize, from the ties to the TIFs to the historic tax credits. So, you know, we know that at some point we can look beyond COVID. We're not there yet. But when we do look beyond COVID, whenever that day comes, Brockton and our residents here are truly positioned. Great education, ample infrastructure, affordable housing, extraordinary work ethic. So the attributes that I just said are really going to continue in the years to come. And our workers are truly the best. Our folks that reside and work in the city of Brockton are just, without question, number one, in my humble opinion. So we're looking to draw more businesses to the city of Brockton to make sure that the skilled professionals that reside here will be able to fill the needs of businesses. And you've heard me say this many times, Sue and Chris and Sheila, if Brockton was a stock, we should all be buying that stock right now. And as mayor, I'm committed, and I have been committed to guide us through this pandemic. And it's not me. I work with the skilled health professionals and the science and the metrics and the data and the business sector. Everybody needs to work together, and we always check egos at the door, and we work in a collaborative manner. So I'm committed to position the city to capitalize on all the strategic advantages that I've outlined already. 35 minutes to get into South Station, 3 commuter stops here in the city of Brockton. Our price point for rent blows away Quincy, Braintree, Dorchester, Southie, Charlestown. People are coming to Brockton, and I love it. And that's what it's important to be the mayor, to really be a cheerleader for the community that I call home. So I'm going to continue to promote Brockton. The audience is near and far that are coming to the City of Champions to talk and listen and learn. I'm going to support at all times the workers in our workforce training. And I want to thank Mass Hire for everything that Sheila and her team does. And I'm just going to encourage people. Discussion needs to continue with our state delegation and our city council and our school committee to grow businesses that are here and expand those businesses. But also, I want to encourage discussion so that new businesses understand that the city of Brockton is a great place to build your roots and expand upon those roots. So again, I just wanted to thank Chris and everybody for inviting me. I always enjoy these Metro South Chamber of Commerce forums. Right now, you know, Zoom is the new normal, so we're all zooming, but it's information that's shared that is really trickling down to all sectors, from the mom and pops to the major corporations here in the city of Brockton. So again, I just really want to thank each and every one of you for your commitment, your partnership, your friendship. And again, I want to thank Secretary Acosta and really the Baker-Polito Administration for your friendship and for continued interest in the City of Champions. Thank you. Stay safe, be well, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan, and thank you for all you do. You've been doing an amazing job through this crisis. It's now my pleasure to introduce Sheila Sullivan-Jardin. Sheila is the Executive Director of the Brockton Area Workforce Investment Board, which is a 24-member business-driven organization that brokers education and training programs throughout a 10-town region. She provides leadership for sector initiatives related to healthcare, manufacturing, and entrepreneurship. As past senior examiner for the Baldrige Criteria for Performance Excellence, these initiatives are outcome-based. Prior to her position at Mass Hire Greater Brockton Workforce Board, Ms. Sullivan-Jardin spent over 20 years in higher education administration and started her own business in grant writing called Grant Connections. Sheila is skilled in planning and implementing workforce and economic development programs for targeted populations and the development of program assessment tools and evaluation for multi-year proposals. Sheila is experienced in developing partnerships with local, state, and federal stakeholders for community collaborations and program development. She earned her bachelor's degree from UMass Amherst and her master's certificate for women in government and a master's degree in public administration from McCormick Institute at UMass Boston. Sheila is active in her local community of Carver. Please join me in welcoming Sheila Sullivan-Jardin.
Good morning, Sue, or good afternoon. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
So we have a few questions for you, which I will start with. First, since your physical offices have been closed, how have you been able to deliver services to adults and youth in our community?
Well, first of all, let me thank you, Chris, for this opportunity, and good afternoon, Secretary Acosta. Good to see you. We've actually had a very interesting couple of months. I'm very proud of the staff and the way that they have used innovation to really continue the delivery of our services. So as you are aware, the physical building is closed, but we have not stopped. This past summer, we did provide youth in our region employment through our traditional summer jobs program. Our programs were mostly delivered virtually, focused on training programs in everything from web design to voter registration and looking at social media, looking at a number of topics that are really key for the youth and for their training. On the adult end, our Career Center truly has pivoted to respond with our Career Center seminars. They're now providing them via Zoom. And while the mayor wants stock in Brockton, I want stock in Zoom because that would have been the next thing to go. We've been able to do it in a multiple of languages. So yet another way that we are kind of changing towards the new reality. How do we deliver our services? Things cannot stop and things don't stop for us. We've also been instrumental with the mayor's leadership and in collaboration with the Brockton Redevelopment Authority, we've been able to administer the small business grant. The Brockton Business Assistance Grant allows small businesses up to $10,000. It is a grant related to expenses for COVID. That has allowed us to continue serving some of the businesses and really contributing to the economic growth of the region. Having this program and administering this program has also yielded several other pieces in regards to technical assistance for our small businesses. We've been able to hook them up with some of our partners. We've been able to hook them up with other resources that are allowing them to not only maintain their business, but also to grow it in these unique times. So between the different populations that we have, our youth, our adults, our business and business assistants, we've really been very, very busy. And again, while the facility is closed, we are still continuing all, if not more, of our services. We were able to provide our banking and finance program 100% virtually. We graduated a full class in that cohort, and they are now on their way to employment. So things are still continuing to move on, even with the new environment that we're dealing with.
Thanks, Sheila. And how do you decide the priority focus areas for your agency?
A lot of data. So fortunately, we do have access. We're in a planning group with the 3 other workforce boards in the region, along with our education partners, Tom Hickey from South Shore, superintendent at South Shore Voc, Elisa Raposa from UMass Dartmouth, our economic partners, Old Colony Planning Council, Mary Waldron, the 4 workforce boards in the region. We've worked together to help analyze some of the data that's been provided by the state through our regional blueprint. And that really allows us to pick apart the different pieces of an industry. How do we focus on them? What type of wages that industry pays? What is the availability in the region? Are there training programs for individuals to, progress in that particular field or business? So we use a lot of that data from the regional blueprint, and the secretary probably will address a portion of that as her and our counterparts in education and economic development lead the project. But But on top of that, we have a board that's 51% private. So I have manufacturers on my board. And if I'm looking to see, are there job openings? What are people paying? What is the credentials? I have private board members on my board that I can go to in our priority industries: finance, insurance, healthcare, manufacturing, and really get that on the ground information about what's happening in their industry today. What are they looking for? What are the new bids? Are you looking for new ISO training? Between the board and the data and the relationships we have with those other partners, we really determine what is going to be the best bang for our region. How do we stimulate the economy, answer the needs of the job seekers, and really make that match? A lot of times it just comes down to, like I said, a lot of data, a lot of numbers.
Thanks, Sheila. And how would business owners get involved in Mass Hire?
There's actually a couple of ways. So I mentioned earlier, we run a youth connecting activities program. The Connecting Activities Partnership is run in conjunction with the Chamber. And that program really connects employers and our youth to better understand the industry and the demand. So we're always looking for guest speakers. We're always looking for volunteers to come in and Zoom with some of our youth. And on top of that, anyone who is a private business owner who has an interest really in promoting their industry and playing a role in how that industry is developed, we are always welcoming new board members to the Mass Hire board. Our website is masshiregbwb.org. There's a number of different mechanisms they can use to either contact myself or to look at the web. As I said, we've got volunteer opportunities along with board membership. We're a pretty active board and we've got a lot of things going on. So I do encourage anyone that is looking for that type of environment to give us a call, and we'd look forward to meeting with them and talking about, how we can make those further connections.
Thanks, Sheila, and thanks you do such important work all the time, and especially now during this pandemic. So thank you for everything that your agency does.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Rosalin Acosta, the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. In her role, Secretary Acosta manages the Commonwealth's workforce development and labor departments to ensure that workers, employers, and the unemployed have the tools, training, and safety resources needed to succeed in the Massachusetts economy. Secretary Acosta also chairs the Workforce Skills Cabinet along with the Secretary of Education and the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development. Prior to joining the Baker-Polito Administration, she was a widely respected financial and banking service professional with over 30 years experience in Greater Boston financial institutions. Secretary Acosta was a director and planning committee member of the Merrimack Valley Workforce Investment Board and was appointed a Northern Essex Community College trustee by Governor Baker. She has been named one of Boston's most influential women by the Women of Harvard Club and Planeta's top 100 most influential Hispanics in Massachusetts. She's also been awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Association for Latino Professionals for America. Born in Cuba, she earned her Bachelor of Arts degree at Wesleyan University in Connecticut, where she was a member of the women's varsity ice hockey team. She is the proud mother of 5 children. Welcome, Secretary Acosta.
Thank you, Sue. That part of the bio is still in there, but it seems to be everyone's favorite part. So I can't get it out of there. It's wonderful being with you today, and really enjoyed listening to Mayor Sullivan's comments. 2 months, getting elected 2 months before this pandemic. Certainly that was not in his job description, and he's done an admirable job pulling Brockton together and making sure that the citizens of Brockton are safe. So kudos to the mayor for all the work that he's been doing. Chris, thank you, and Sue, thank you for this invitation. We would rather be there in person, right? We would rather be doing this with the visual of having, but here we are. And Sheila, thank you for all your comments and all the work that you've been doing in Brockton. Now more than ever, that conversation of reemployment is so important, and I'll touch upon that today. But I thought we'd start a little bit with just talking about some of the things that have happened, certainly in our office since March. We've all learned or overused several words like unprecedented and historical and pivoting and all of those words that we're constantly using over and over because we find ourselves needing to use these words to describe the situation, the unprecedented situation that we're all in. I just did it. When we started this journey back in March, it seems like there's no history before March. On March 14th, Governor Baker directed us to implement emergency regulations to help the Department of Unemployment Assistance meet the demand for financial assistance that arose from this pandemic. Now, prior to this pandemic, Mass had never had a single week with more than 30,000 people claiming unemployment. And during this pandemic, we've seen 10 consecutive weeks with greater than 30,000 claimants every single week. And so to deal with this level of demand, we really had to scale up extremely quickly. We transformed an organization with about 50 people that were office-based to the call center. This was our Department of Unemployment call center, to over 2,000 employees working remotely. So again, the hardware and the software and all of the telephone technology all had to be set up in a very quick way as we were dealing with avalanche of claims and of volume. And over the past 6 months, we have fielded millions of inbound calls in our expanded customer service department, and we've made over 500,000 outbound calls to those requiring additional services. And during the crucial first few weeks and months while the staff was in process, we also implemented daily virtual town halls, which were attended by around 500,000 people and were held in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Some of you may not know that Portuguese has Massachusetts has the largest Portuguese-speaking community in the United States. So very important for us to translate and have those services accessible in multiple languages. We've also held numerous town halls, information sessions with our business community partners. I think that's one of the big unsung stories of this unemployment crisis is the role that the employers have played in helping employees during these difficult times. This really has been an all-in moment. You all care about the people who work for you, and I've been so impressed with the level of compassion and commitment that our employer community has placed in those who have lost their jobs, ensuring that they are receiving the benefits they depend on to get through these very, very trying times. And I'm also happy to report that thanks to the Department of Unemployment Assistance previous work of migrating the online system into the cloud, our application never crashed. And I can say the same thing for many of our colleagues across the country where they saw their unemployment system collapse under the weight of the new claim volume that they were seeing. We were one of the first states in the country to implement many of the new social benefit programs implemented for groups like self-employed, those lacking wages, those who exhausted benefits, and supplemental funding to all beneficiaries as part of the CARES Act, which was a federal program. And we had to re-engineer and stand up brand new systems again very quickly. Everything has happened very quickly. It's been 7 months now since we started this journey, and the economic fallout from the pandemic, frankly, is still being sorted out. Trends are still emerging, and we're looking at those trends. The Commonwealth's unemployment rate dropped from 17.7 in June to 9.6% in September. And compared to February 2020, before this all started, the labor force dropped by 289,000 people. And from February to April, we've lost an estimated 690,000 jobs. Now, a good percent of those are back, but not completely. We've had about 270,000 private sector jobs come back, or about 41% of the total loss. But we still have a way to go. The two sectors with the largest job recovery were in construction. They've recovered at almost 64%, or 37,000 jobs, followed by manufacturing that has recovered about 53% of the jobs they lost, or about 14,000 jobs. But while the drastic lowering of the unemployment rate and recent job growth is good news, we are still carrying a higher rate than during the depths of the Great Recession. And discrepancies for who and where unemployment remains high are exacerbating. The unemployment rate for Hispanics in Massachusetts was 13.6% in September, and the Black unemployment rate stood at 10.9% compared to the white unemployment rate at 7.4%. And the unemployment rate in Metro South is 8.4%, whereas in Hampton County, it's 13.5%. In cities like Lexington, it's 6.3%, whereas Lawrence is 23%. So you can see the great disparities regionally that we have on these unemployment rates. And as we looked at our claimant volume and we tried to compare the type of workers that were laid off, the industries, the sectors that we're in, obviously in the initial parts of this pandemic, we had a lot of hospitality, retail, anything accommodations and food services were hit extremely hard. Wage claimant data from this year versus last year is about 40% lower wages than the typical claimants that we had a year ago. So again, this has hit our lower wage workers much harder than we've previously seen in our historical numbers. So now we have to really focus, as Sheila started saying, on the road to reemployment. These are unimaginable job losses, bigger than we've ever seen. And we need to make sure now that we're being very intentional about how we're going to get folks back to work. So while we've faced massive job gains in many of the sectors, we've also not gone back to where the previous pre-pandemic rates where we were. So now we have to make that shift from the unemployment benefits to providing reemployment services, and that's where the mass hire comes in, and organizations like Metro South Chamber of Commerce are going to be playing an ever more critical role to help us get back on our feet. As many of you may have seen, mass hire, as Sheila just talked about, is closed for walk-in, but so much of what we do now is virtual. Virtual job fairs, virtual career action plans, and Sheila walked through some of those, and we're planning on continuing that. We really have found that so many more people access the services because that age-old issue of transportation is not as prevalent now that people are working remotely or trying to access these services digitally. We're redesigning training in virtual environments for the unemployed who may need to shift industries and pathways, including access to 50,000 licenses through the online skills building platform called Coursera. They have thousands of training programs, and we have licenses that we'd like people to sign up for. So this is available to everyone in the Commonwealth. They can sign up for these Coursera courses. We have 50,000 licenses, and we want to make sure that we use all 50,000 of those. And registration for that is closing soon. So please go to our Mass Hire website to learn more about Coursera. And we've sought throughout this entire pandemic, we've sought additional grants from the federal government. There have been grants that have been available for this recovery and this reemployment. We've sought $7 million from the U.S. Department of Labor in disaster recovery funds. And basically, the portion of the funding will support 340 individuals to access occupational training and career support, leading to full-time employment. Another portion of the grant pays to reemploy dislocated and food service workers into subsidized employment at humanitarian food service organizations, including cooks, prep workers, laborers, and delivery drivers. And we're retooling our apprenticeship models for hybrid and online learning. We've secured $1.5 million from the Department of Labor for our apprenticeship programs. And that is really important as we work ourselves out and engineer ourselves out of this pandemic. Part of that funding we are using for in-demand occupations for about 980 people in the biotech and healthcare, transportation, and other sectors that adhere to the grant's requirements. And we're really targeting rural areas and individuals in hospitality and related sectors who have been displaced by COVID. Just a couple more things, and then I'll stop. I think we have time for questions, but I want to make sure that our employer community is also aware of our WorkShare program because so many employers have taken advantage of that, and frankly have been able to keep workers during this pandemic at a modified time schedule, but that worker still receives full payment or a full salary. We've held a bunch of virtual seminars. We've had over 500 companies sign up for this WorkShare program, and that has affected about 60,000 workers. So the WorkShare program allows the businesses to keep their employees working while they are experiencing a slower period. And the way that works is the business is able to reduce the hours of their employees, keeping them working, while the WorkShare program supplements the reduced hours with unemployment funds. And you can reduce the hours of businesses can reduce hours of their employees from 10 to 60% of an employee's time. The WorkShare program has allowed many of our businesses to continue their operations without having to lay off their employees. And WorkShare is the most popular option that businesses have been using to stay in business during COVID, with over 500 new employer applications post-COVID pandemic. So if you're a company and you know you're interested in this program, we'd be happy to hold a WorkShare webinar, have a conversation with you, and tell you a little bit more about how WorkShare may help you with your employee scheduling. Workforce Training Fund continues to be very strong. I think companies have found themselves in a place today where they have new pain points, and they need to train their workers differently. Please talk to us about our Workforce Training Fund if you need to train any of your employees. This also includes training for English as a second language. That is one thing that we are seeing in our claimant claimant data. We have a much higher much higher number of claimants that English is their second language. So they're going to need help with English as a second language, and we certainly don't want those folks not to be employed because of that language barrier. So in closing, I really just want to thank you all for everything that you're doing for your communities, for the Commonwealth. This has been a very interesting journey for a lot of us. I think we've learned a ton from this process. We've learned a ton from how quickly we've had to shift into digital. And frankly, it really bodes well for apprenticeship programs in the IT space. And it certainly bodes really well for apprenticeship programs in cybersecurity. As you all know, fraud has increased exponentially since COVID. I read a report recently that said it has increased 400% since March all over the country. So thank you all for your time. And I guess I turn it back to Sue. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Secretary Acosta, and thank you for all you do as well. This has been a period where we've all had to come together, and your department and the administration certainly have stepped to the plate in a big way as well. So thank you. We do have some questions from the audience, and I'm getting them from a variety of sources. So let me start with, I have a couple questions of my own, and then we'll get to some of the others. At the Health Center, we haven't had any furloughs because it's been all hands on deck with being hit so hard and so fast. One of the greatest challenges we're facing is critical staffing shortages because of parents needing to support their children with virtual learning. Is there any discussion of that at the state level, and how can we make that better?
There are a lot of discussions about this. This has been, frankly, a big issue for workers. One of the things that I'm seeing very clearly in our unemployment claimant numbers is before the pandemic, a third of our claimants were women. Now, 2/3 of our claimants are women. So that just shows you a big shift in women, once again, taking that burden of, or the responsibility of childcare or elder care, right? So kind of stuck in the middle. And so we are seeing that, and I work closely with Secretary Pizer and the Department of Education to make sure that that we're addressing this. And the governor did sign an executive order a few weeks ago now, allowing for the learning pods and allowing for daycare centers, et cetera, to form different learning pods, parents to form learning pods. But that's not an answer for everyone. As a matter of fact, through the work that we launched about 2 years ago now with the Healthcare Collaborative, Sue, I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, where we're really focused on the healthcare industry, and particularly in the areas of direct care, nursing outside of both Boston, and behavioral health as three critical occupations or areas that need a lot more workers. And one of our hospitals was saying that they had partnered with a very large local daycare, and they purchased a bunch of seats, and they still had a ton of capacity because people weren't using those learning pod seats because of fear of virus, et cetera. So we still have a big challenge ahead of us on this. I think certainly the governor is encouraging schools to follow the science, follow the data, and make sure that if you can be in person, that you are in person. But the challenge of having workers either work remotely and help their kindergarten students doing Zoom, or workers that are not working remotely, they actually have to be out physically on premise. What are they going to do with their kids when they're home? So we continue working with our early education partners and Executive Office of Education because it is something that is impacting the workforce in a major way.
Thanks. It's certainly a challenge that we're all struggling with and trying to be flexible, but it's tough. The other question is, we're hearing that there, with all of the pressures, probably the greatest pressures you've ever had on your unemployment system, we understand that there's a nationwide fraud in unemployment, and we're actually seeing it at the health center, 2 or 3 claims a week of people who never filed and never stopped working. Has there been any progress on figuring out how to stop that?
I don't think anyone can stop it, Sue. There's, this is another national pandemic that we're all working against. And certainly we in Massachusetts are working very closely with law enforcement throughout the country. We also are doing a lot of different things with our colleagues. I'm purposely being vague because I don't want to give away exactly what the tools that we're using. But a lot of this is pure ID theft. And I know personally that I was affected 3 years ago with the Experian data breach, where my data was compromised. I think this has been a perfect time for fraudsters. If you have that data, they have been using that data. And sometimes it looks pretty close to Rosalin Acosta. It's my social security number, it is my address, it is my phone number, it is my email, but the bank account is different, right? So there's a lot of sophistication in what's going on here. And we have done a lot to stem the tide, but we also know that now our municipalities are getting hit. Right, so there are a lot of municipalities that are getting hit, and healthcare seems to be one of their favorites. And I think people are really busy and they don't always check their information. And I think that's what fraudsters are counting on, that you're too busy to check your information. So there's a lot of great tools on our mass.gov website, also the Attorney General's website, on how to protect yourself from fraud. I really encourage everyone. We get very, very sloppy with our personal data, and that's part of the problem. We need to be changing our passwords. We need to not be clicking. There's a lot of phishing going on. There's something called claimant hijacking going on throughout the country right now that we're seeing, where an outsider gets into your computer because you let them in accidentally by clicking on a link. And then they can take over your computer and get access to all your information. And if they see that you've filed for unemployment, they go right in there and they change the bank account number. So there are a lot of things that we have to take personal responsibility for in this fight. But there's a lot of things that we're doing from a department perspective to make sure that we're not paying out fraudulent claims.
Thanks.
Secretary, let me just jump in. First off, thank you so much for being here. You're reminding me of your last visit with us at the Athena Awards, and you were extraordinary. And it's just great.
100 years ago.
It's great to see. Yeah, it seems like everything pre-March is another world, but you were phenomenal there, and it's great to see your leadership still in place. On the fraud, my understanding is that there is a website that people can go and report if they receive a correspondence saying that they file for unemployment when they haven't. Is that something?
Chris, thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes. So, and we should probably put it in the chat, and I can do that, but it's mass.gov/unemployment-fraud. So if you did receive, and I'll throw that in the chat when I'm done speaking, can't do two things at once. But if you have received a letter that said you filed a claim and you obviously did not file a claim, the first thing I need you to do is to go on that website to let us know that, and also make sure that we're reporting that to the proper authorities. And that will give you information also on what you should be doing, filing a police report, freezing your credit, or at least putting an alert on one of the 3 credit reporting agencies, Experian, TransUnion. And once you alert one credit agency, all 3 get alerted. So you don't have to do all 3, just one. So lots of good information on that, and I'll make sure I put that in the chat. Thank you for saying that.
Thanks, it's helpful. I have 3 questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to jump to those next. First is from Charles Kilmer. Have you been experiencing a growing skills gap with a growing number of people retiring or repurposing their employment elsewhere?
That's part of the things that we continue to analyze. There are a lot of trends that are emerging, but there is still a lot that we need to learn. We do know that as before before pandemic, post pandemic, the more senior folks, senior workers, elder workers, however you want to call it. I'm now considered an elder worker myself. Have been facing higher unemployment rates, but we're also seeing people dropping out of the workforce earlier, and we're seeing people deciding to retire. I think, Sue, we see that in healthcare with nurses. And just deciding that it's time, and retirements. So in terms of skills, it depends on how long you were in your job, and the skills that you had then may not get you to where you need to be today. But we're still analyzing a lot of the trends in our claimant information. Because Sheila and everyone in Mass Hire, all need to make sure that we're ready for those kind of retrainings. So that's where we are, still focused, very, very focused on manufacturing, healthcare, IT, construction. Those were really important sectors for us before the pandemic, and they continue to be, and also professional and business services. We are working with a few banks now to start apprenticeship programs in banking, which we never had before. So a lot going on to hopefully broaden the net for different skill sets and bring a broader amount of our claimants in, because we are estimating right now that we may have about 300,000 folks, give or take, that are going to be permanently separated from their jobs for a while. That's a very large number. So there are things that we'll be announcing very soon, very proactive tools to reach those 300,000 people.
Thanks. Next question from the Q&A. With several vacant buildings throughout the region, how can a small business acquire a property to operate from?
Oh, I'm not sure I'm the most qualified person to answer that question. But
I was just going to jump in. So a lot of folks that are on the call also are on our COVID recovery calls every other Friday, and we talk about SBA lending and seed corporation, and in particular the 504 and 7A loans that are available at a really low cost to acquire and to operate businesses. So I think what we'll do is we'll post the seed site in response to that question, and then ask folks from Seed to get in touch with you. I noticed a question comes from an anonymous source, so if we can get your contact information, we'll be happy to follow up with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Next, a question from someone whose son filed a PUA claim in August, and it's been with an adjuster since the beginning of September. They said they've supplied identification requirements. No one can tell us when the claim will be released. Any suggestions about what to do next?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the particular circumstance of that is, so hard to answer claimant questions. We have very little wait, if no wait at all, in our call center right now. And if whoever asked that question can send me an email, I will be happy to take a look at it. I'm at Rosalin.Acosta at mass.gov. I'll put that in the chat also. And we'll be happy to follow up on the individual concern, but it's hard for me to do that here.
Okay, thanks. So the next question gets into more details about the Workforce Training Fund. Are there any advantages for veterans, women, minority training providers to be selected? And can you give some examples of recent awards that may be especially creative?
I don't have off the top of my head, Sue, so a recent award. We just awarded several workforce training funds, and one of the things that we are definitely focused on is diversity of our training pool, making sure that as employers apply for a grant, that the folks that they're training is a diverse pool of trainees that reflect their company and the constituents that they're serving, or the communities that they're serving. I really want to encourage the English as a second language workforce training grants. Those are available. I think they're underutilized, and I think, frankly, as we come into this reemployment, where we're trying to get more folks into the workforce, we're going to need the ESOL training more than ever. But I can't just come up quickly right now with an example but we have that all posted in our Commonwealth Corporation website. We have a list of all of our recent grantees, and what I can tell you is that they span the Commonwealth. They span the Commonwealth, and they span industries. Manufacturing is usually our top they apply the most. So I would encourage folks from other industries and other sectors to also apply. We also have our folks from finance and banking that also apply, but manufacturing definitely takes the lead for the training, and there's a lot of training in the manufacturing space, so that makes sense. But companies from other sectors can certainly apply, and there's a lot of information on the Commonwealth Corporation site.
Okay, thanks. And can these funds be used for COVID-related safety training and protocol training?
I believe so, Sue, but I'd have to double check on that, but I believe they can be used for safety training also.
Okay.
As long as the training provider is certified, and as long as it's a training provider that has gone through the application process with the state, then I believe the answer is yes.
Okay, thanks.
I just wanted to jump in. Sheila, I think, is required to review any from our region. I don't know if she has anything to add. I think they all have to flow through the Mass Hire local office. Is that right?
Yeah, so after the application's completed, one piece of the final review is to come back to the workforce board that the business is located in, so that we can really talk a little bit about how that fits into the overall blueprint, the overall economic balance of the region itself. We are actually hosting one with Commonwealth Corporation on October 30th, a workshop. The information is in the chat box, and certainly somebody can just register for that. There's no fee, no charge. We do provide these opportunities on a regular basis, but we will also work with companies one-on-one who's interested in applying. My staff and myself have had years of experience working with the Workforce Training Fund, and it really can be a easy process if you sometimes just know a little bit of the, the twist and turn. And again, we're happy to help companies do that. And then the other piece is putting them in companies in touch with vendors, business companies that might want training but don't know where to go for training. We're going to hook them up with our training pro, show them some of the opportunities. Some of our partners that we work with, Mass Associate, Mass Extension, Mass MEP, so making that connection between employers and vendors is also part of the Workforce Training Fund process and the work that we do through there.
Yeah, we're really trying to get to yes on these applications. So sometimes if the application is insufficient and we just need to work on it more with the employer, we do. And at the end of the day, most employers will get the Workforce Training Fund grant because we work very closely with them. But Sheila made an important point of we also want to make sure that we follow the blueprints, the blueprint of that region, so that we are supporting employers that are significant for that region, and making sure that there are jobs and the jobs that we're training for are good jobs. So blueprints are also a very important part of this process.
We encourage everyone on this call to apply for these funds. These funds are collected as part of the unemployment or part of that process of collecting unemployment from employers. I think it's $8 per employee statewide. And that amounts to, believe it or not, $21 million or so every year that's set aside in the trust fund for training. And we always say to our employers, please apply for it, because if you don't apply for it and get it to train your workers, then a competitor in another region may apply for it and train their employees, who then may be more competitive in terms of competing for business and clients and whatnot. So all of those funds are already collected. They're already set aside for training. And if you have a new piece of equipment, or you have a new process or safety process or certification that you need that's going to make you more efficient, or in many cases, training that may lower your insurance costs, we tell folks, this is a great way to do that. And so we encourage you to check that out. Thank you.
And we've been pretty flexible in this, in this environment, because a lot of folks had to shift real quickly to online. They were doing hands-on training. So we've given some waivers, some extensions to make sure that employers are feeling that this is worth pursuing. And we're, again, working very hard to help people get into the online training mode. Because they've had to. And so some of them have been very successful in going 100% online. Some are hybrid. But we've worked a lot with companies to make sure that they continue the training, but just in a different deliverable.
Chris, one other just quick piece is that it really is soup to nuts. It might be a $5,000 grant, or it might be $250,000. So small companies can access it very easy. There's express grants. There's so many different programs available for every size company. We do, same here. We encourage everyone to take a look, apply, and it is your money. So we do want them to utilize it. And it provides us with a better trained region. It just, there's so many benefits to the economic development of it, personal development. We do really strongly encourage people and be happy to help them out with that.
And just two quick examples. The Chamber has applied for grants over the years. We received one to train people in new software that we had installed on new computers that we invested in. And it was very, very helpful. We did it actually through your center, Sheila, and UMass Dartmouth professors came in and taught our staff, the 3 or 4 of us, how to use the software. And another one was on, we purchased a defib unit for our office, but nobody knew how to use it. I mean, if you touch the button, it tells you what to do, but it's kind of intimidating. So that
Especially in an emergency.
Exactly. You'd rather kind of do a dry run than have to. So that was very, very helpful. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next question, actually I'm gonna combine two. Employees who were furloughed and refusing to return to work, and employees who were never furloughed but collected anyway. And I see this questioner has a website posted and wanting to know if that's the right one to report it. But any other thoughts that you have about a situation where employees are not returning to work?
First of all, Sheila, if you can check that website and put the right one on, if that's the wrong one. Just want to caution everyone to please be careful when you're going and you're Googling these things. Always search from the mass.gov site, which is the legitimate site. There's a lot of lookalikes out there. I've become very skeptical. so stay on mass.gov. So we have seen it, Sue. We definitely have seen, you know, I think that it's real. It's, I was saying before that I was seeing it was more anecdotal than it was real. Definitely we are seeing both employees that are being frauded, right? Their ID has been stolen, and therefore they're getting accused of filing an unemployment claim when they didn't. And then we're also seeing employers that are disputing their employees' refusal to come back to work because there's work available. And part of receiving unemployment benefits is you have to be able and available to go to work. So some of them are not clear cut. We absolutely are getting a lot of those emails in our website that Sheila will post. And we have to look at those individually, one by one, because not in all cases, you have to listen to both sides. So not in all cases, it's completely as presented. So we have to look at all of those situations. But we definitely are seeing, we're definitely seeing some volume there over the past couple of months where employers are reporting in that they either offered work to their employees and their employee decided not to come back, or again, the case of their employees still working and fine, but they're receiving a notice. So two very different situations and two very different ways we handle it.
Thanks. And we only have time for one last question. So let me go to the governor's budget and ask if there's anything you want to highlight related to workforce in that budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be testifying tomorrow in front of Ways and Means to talk about the governor's budget. And fortunately, you know, our budget did not change all that much on the workforce side. We are very excited and continue to be excited about a budget line item that we put in there in January, and it's still there, which is our Career Technical Initiative Program. And that program really is a great training for our adults, and it would be using our vocational schools at night. So doing adult training on all of our important pathways, again, the trades, healthcare, IT, manufacturing, to make sure that we're doing using those facilities, which are beautiful, and we've all spent a ton of money upgrading all of the equipment in our voc schools to make sure that we're expanding the hours so that our adults can come in and get retrained. So more to come on that. There'll be actually more announcements on getting people back to work coming very soon. So stay tuned for that. But our CTI program is very, very important to us, as well as our Workforce Competitive Trust Fund. These are for folks that are not currently working. And again, we're trying to bring them back into the workforce. And that's going to be really important for those 300,000 people that I'm talking about that are potentially permanently separated from their jobs.
Well,
There's a lot
Secretary
more.
Chris.
I just want to do a follow-up on the budget. It was brought to my attention that the Regional Economic Development Initiatives has been increased quite a bit. Do you know what the rationale is behind that? Are they looking to, the activities traditionally have been to foster economic development and collaboration between regions to further strengthen businesses and relocations and training, that type of thing. But we have not been in direct contact with Secretary of Economic Development. I'm not sure if there's something that the governor's talked about.
Oh, yeah. So Secretary Keneally and I we work very, very well together. And this whole economic development plan is born of the pillars of community development, making sure that our downtown businesses are thriving, but also getting people back to work. So we both work very, very closely to make sure that the programs that are in his office, along with the programs from our office and education. So this is part of the workforce skills cabinet, right? The three of us work hand in hand to look at our grants and our goals. This is how the blueprints came about to make sure that we're all working very synergistically. And again, there's more to come on the economic development front, as well as the workforce front in the coming days. So I'm leaving it mysterious. Leaving it mysterious, Chris.
I'll be tuning in. Thank you.
Well, Secretary Acosta, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to hear, and I'm just always so impressed by what this administration is doing in all respects related to the pandemic, and workforce is certainly at the top of that list. So thank you for all you're doing, and thank you for being with us today.
No, thank you for the invitation. It was a real pleasure to be here with you today. Maybe next year we'll be able to do this.
In person. Well, thank you so much. Now to finish up with just a few quick announcements from the Chamber. October 29th is a live virtual networking at 10:30 in the morning. October 30th, COVID-19 Economic Resource and Recovery Update with city, state, and federal officials. Those are very informative meetings. November 18th, the 107th Annual Meeting in Business to Business Expo. Wednesday, November 18th, virtually via Zoom, and please register as soon as possible as there are limited tickets remaining. Member-led workshops, October 21st, which is tomorrow. Cybersecurity for your home office, 5 steps every business leader needs to know. And October 22nd, which is Thursday, Grow with Google webinar series. And for more information for either of those, please email Lexi. She'll put her information in the chat box. So thank you all for attending. Thank you to Secretary Acosta, to Sheila Sullivan-Jardim, and thank you to the Chamber for bringing us together for these great conversations. Thank you all and have a great day.